All right, back to the GIIC Innovation Summit, and let's actually set the ball rolling on this spotlight. I think yesterday, if I remember what Jan was telling us in the briefing at dinner, was that there's got to be a wow moment that we want to derive from these conversations. Now, I think the wow moment definitely comes by the sheer number of vehicles that are sold, cars that are sold in India. Last count, 2024, I think India recorded 4.2 million cars that were sold on Indian roads. Now, anybody who doubts the India growth story, who has questions on the fact that India is now the fourth largest economy, I think just the sheer volume of the number of cars that are sold in India tells us that the economic health of the country is great and only getting better. I think things were very different, Jörg, when you were in India and when you were heading Volkswagen more than 10, 12 years ago. I think that story, the automobile story, the aspirational India story has really gotten into overdrive, hasn't it?
It has. At the time when we started, this was really quite different. And we had big expectations at that time and how the market will be grow and so on, and how the success of our cars will come. What was not in that range we have expected, but it went very well on. So at that time, it was a good start.
Right. And, it's also another wow moment for India also comes from the fact that a big chunk of the cars which are sold in India right now are not, with due respect to the speaker from Maruti Suzuki who was here just a short while back, are actually not the Maruti 800s or the Altos. They are not the smaller cars, but rather Indians are now fancying the SUVs a lot more than perhaps in your time in India.
Yes, at that time it was a sedan, what was mainly the car, and a little hatchback. And now it changed, as you rightly said. Nowadays, if you see the figures, you have the SUVs far in front, then the hatchbacks and sedan just a little. So this really changed quite a lot.
Right. So I think to really be relevant to the German audience also now, I thought let's structure this spotlight dialogue into 3 or 4 very critical buckets. And some of these buckets, I believe, begin, of course, we are doing the Innovation Summit here. So one cannot not talk about innovation. Innovation in technology becomes the first pillar that I'd like to discuss and get Jörg's views on. But I think beyond innovation and beyond technology, sustainability is a large theme which is driving the global agenda when it comes to automobility. Donald Trump notwithstanding, drill baby drill notwithstanding. And I think the last point also happens to be around culture, around what is the message and what are the values that must be drilled down to the last factory worker in the large ecosystem of auto manufacturing in India. So let's take them one by one with Jörg. Jörg, to begin with, innovation, collaboration in innovation, technology transfer, and this whole challenge, which I think it's not just the auto sector, it's industries across the world that try to balance out quality and affordability. How does technology, innovation bridge the gap where great technology could also be greatly affordable?
I would take a look into the different markets. Let's take the Indian market. As we talk about India, it is very important to understand what customers wants to have, what their needs are. And based on this, on concrete problems, I call it problems or needs or expectations, you need to work on innovation, Because if you think, let's say in Europe, somewhere in the development center, you have good ideas how a car look like, this does not work. Maybe this was the approach 20 years ago or so, but not nowadays. Now you have to sit together with your customers or with your teams, with your diverse teams, sitting together and solving concrete problems together in a safety space also, what is also important, because my topic is people, how to bring people to innovation. You need to create also a safety space where people can work together, collaborate in an open way, also being allowed maybe to make some mistakes or so. This also has to be possible, because these are also results. And then if you bring all these things together, I think then you are on the way to create innovation.
All right. I cannot not think about China as an example. Are there lessons from China for Germany as well as from India? For India, the fact that innovation at scale, brilliant product launches, and affordability all come together in pretty much the entire electric mobility market, which China has been able to sort of, create wonders in. I'm talking BYD, I'm also talking Xiaomi. You've seen diversification, you've seen traditional electronics companies now really come out with battery technology and with innovation in the automobile sector, where affordability as well as quality come together. Are there lessons in perhaps technology, innovation, diversification? What can India or Germany learn from the China example when it comes to at least electric mobility and the innovation for new age mobility?
I mean, if we take a look into China, then we see that the Chinese automobilists have learned how to produce cars. They have learned it, no?
At scale,
At scale, yes.
cheap cars,
Yeah, cheap
and
cars.
arguably good quality?
Yeah, cheap cars. Let's take a look into the results of the companies. Yeah, maybe we can have a different interpretation then. Yeah, but in general, they learned how to build cars. So, and what we can learn from them now is the speed. Yeah? Our release cycles are far too long, from my point of view. This is one learning point what we can take from Chinese automobilists, for example. Yeah? And maybe in India, it's more or less the same. Yeah? This is something Germany is very, very good in: processes, quality, and brand trust, and all these things. No? But speed has to come more. And this is driven by digitalization now, or digital transformation. Then it will come automatically because customers are demanding this. Now, some years ago, it was, let's say, a surprise to understand that a customer in China, for example, wants to have karaoke in the car. Yeah? Explain this to a development person 5 years ago, central headquarters somewhere, was very hard to explain. Nowadays, I think everybody understood. And if you take a look at the cars, you could see at the IAA, for example, now, some days ago, this was quite a change compared with 2 years before. No? So very positive. I think there are a lot of learnings, but it's not at the end now.
And are there also learnings that perhaps need to be instilled in looking at newer materials? Because, Germany leading innovation, Germany being absolutely pitch perfect when it comes to technology, use of technology. But Germany, like the rest of the world, is also dealing with a supply chain restriction where lithium ion, the batteries which are going to power the next generation of mobility, the dependence on China continues to be high. What is it that automakers, auto manufacturers can learn, let's say, from an Indian technology, not exactly an Indian technology, but a company which is now experimenting with sodium-ion batteries, KPIT being the company I'm talking about. So is there need for innovators, is there need for technology enthusiasts to really look at diversified supply chains and diversified materials where dependence on a particular country is lower?
From my point of view, yes, there is a need, because if you want to be successful in the future, you need to have a kind of technological sovereignty. If you do not have this, if you're completely dependent on batteries, for example, I think it's a problem, because the add value of batteries is such a huge thing, 40%, I would say, more or less, yeah? And this is the most expensive component within the car, and you drive the performance of the car and quite a lot of important things. You talk about total cost of ownership at the end, and. So it is quite important to work on battery technology.
All right, so battery technology, finally, I think we are running out of time, but Jörg, this is a subject that you want to definitely talk about, and we'd love to hear your views. And this is about culture, the people, the human capital that goes into the shop floor, that goes into retail stores, and that goes into pretty much, everything that defines any industry, any sector. The people who are at the helm or at the real bottom of the pyramid, across the board, across the chain. How does the culture of innovation, the culture of being meaningful to your product and to your customer, how does that percolate down to the last employee in any organization? What's the best way to do it?
So I have gained experiences. I worked and lived in Brazil, in India, in China, and Europe. No? And at the end, it's always the same, because you deal with people, yeah? And people wants to be treated well. This is very important. You need to treat people well. You need to listen to people. You need to try to understand people. It's not enough to have an intercultural training of about 5 hours and then you're of the opinion you know everything. This is not correct. So you need to take your time and try to understand the people. And if you are on this way and people realize this, I think then this is the best thing you can do.
Why is it not done?
Why not?
Everybody knows listening to people is the surest way to do it. Why do companies not listen to people? Why do companies not listen to employees? And how does one build that culture of companies actually seeing value in listening to the last employee?
I tell you, this is a very good question and a difficult question. Don't ask me. I don't know why. I just can give recommendation or think, how would I do this? How would I do this?
How did you do it when you were heading, let's say, the India Volkswagen plant in your early years in India? What was your leadership style? What was your policy when it came to people in your organization?
I tried to understand the people. This is what is important for them. For example, what I have learned, what was not clear for me before, is that not only the person in the company, in the factory is important, also the family behind, for example, because they need to take care of them and so on, if they come from villages or whatever. So we need to find things, how to support the person and the family behind. So this is small learning, or how to interact. So in Germany, we are sometimes quite direct. We say what you say is wrong. I never would do this in other countries. I need to find different ways how to deal with this kind of things. And this is something you need to learn over time. And if you are, again, in a safety space, you can talk to people face to face, then you get also information, and people consult you as well, what is good and not.
Right. So I think it just reminds me this conversation of a book written by Mr. Vineet Nair, one of the co-founders and once the CEO of HCL Tech, which said, employee first, customer second. In one word, do you agree? Employee first, customer second, or does customer continue to be king?
No, I would not agree. I say customers and employees first. So if I do not treat the customer right, I can have the best employees.
So it's customer first, employee second? Or it's a draw?
I would say 1.0 customer, 1.1 employee.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jörg Müller for you on the Spotlight Dialogue. Thank you so much, Jörg.